Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for tuning in. Today I'm going to be discussing my Supra. I'm going to be talking about what it was when I purchased the car versus what it is now. All the things I've done to kind of refresh it to make it a reliable daily driver, as well as all the modifications I've made to make it a better performing car. Originally, I really wanted to go out and shoot on the Snake, which if you're familiar with Southern California is kind of like the birthplace of street racing in Southern California. Unfortunately, the road is actually down for repair. I tried to go up there 2 different days, both days locked down. So if you live in this area and you know of any other roads that might be open so I can do some great driving shots of the car, please go ahead and post in the comments down below. Let me know where it's at. I would love to go ahead and shoot that video of just the car driving from all these different angles so you can see the car in action. Also, while you're there, don't be afraid to subscribe to my channel. And with that, I will go ahead and start this with talking about what it was like to purchase the car. So if you've seen my other video where I talk about how to purchase a Supra and what to look for, you're going to understand my next statement. If you haven't seen that video, I'm going to go ahead and post a link right up here and you can go ahead and watch it if you want. Pretty much when I bought the car, the previous owner was an idiot, a legit idiot. He had an actual Supra and he treated it like a Honda Civic. He half-assed everything. He tried to jury-rig stuff to go on the cheap, and it pretty much, after talking to him for about 10 minutes, I knew I was gonna have to put some work into the car. But actually I was okay with that. I like working on the car, and the car did tick all of my required boxes. It had a clean title, it's a Mark IV, it was an original turbo 6-speed, so there was no conversion. It had a good compression and it passed the leak down test, and the transmission was shifting smooth, which meant that the basis of the car was still strong, but I knew I was gonna have to put some time, work, and money into pretty much making it refreshed and a more reliable daily driver. So the first day I bought the car, knowing that the seller was a moron, there was some things I needed to take care of before I was comfortable driving the car anywhere. First thing was he actually had the HKS mushroom filter, but he didn't have any of the foam in the filter. He just had some women's nylons going over the filter. And I think I know what he was thinking. I have seen that on some drag cars, usually because they're not too concerned with small particles getting in the engine, just large ones that will destroy the engine because they rebuild it about every season anyways. However, as a daily driver, not a good way to go. So I immediately went down to Pep Boys, picked up a Spectre filter, just threw it on there real quick to make sure I was getting good, decent, clean air into the engine. I also picked up a set of spark plugs, because why not do those? I don't know if this guy had ever done it. I didn't trust him. The other thing I did on the first day, which I'd never seen before, was the guy literally had 4 different brands of tires on this car. Each wheel had a different brand of tire. And they were also getting kind of close to their expiration point. They were like 12, 15 years old. So I really wanted decent tires. So I went down to America's Tire and I wanted to get the Michelin Pilot Sports. I had them on my first Supra. They are phenomenal tires, very grippy, good tread wear. Unfortunately, they no longer make them for the factory size rims. So I had a decision to make. And I didn't want to upgrade my rims quite yet. So I didn't want to get the most expensive tire, knowing that I was going to do that sooner or later because I was going to want wider tires. So I went with the Hankook Ventus V12. They're a pretty good tire. They have some good stick. They're not exactly the best out there, but they definitely do for the time being. Sooner or later, when I do get some aftermarket rims, I'll go a little bit wider. Then I can get those Michelin Pilot Sports that I like so much. So after I took care of some of the major mechanical issues I saw as a potential issue for driving the car, I turned my attention to the interior. Now, the guy had put on this weird wood grain dash sticker kit, and it was ugly. It does not look right in this car at all. On top of that, some of the resin on it was starting to delaminate, and it just looked absolutely ugly. So I was taking these panels out of this car one at a time, prying off the wood, sanding them, primering them with a satin primer, and then using a satin black paint. And I think it gives it an almost stock look, 10 times better than what it was when the previous owner had that wood grain sticker kit. Another weird thing that was going on with the interior of this car that I took care of was in here, for some reason, he had one of those car phones like what you saw in like the late 80s, early 90s, where you had to open this up and it had a full, like, you know, phone in there, and he drilled into it and cut it out. So I got a new one of these from Toyota, swapped it in, much better, much cleaner. I know it's a little messy in there. I got some masks in there for the COVID thing and some phone chargers and various odds and ends. But now I think this interior looks way better than what it was when I first bought the car. All that stuff I just talked about, I pretty much did within the first week of owning the car. After that first week, like I said, the seller was an absolute idiot. I didn't trust anything he said he'd done to the car. There was no paperwork to prove it, and even if he did do it, I didn't trust that he'd done it right. So I wanted to go a little bit deeper with the maintenance on the car. So I took it down to a shop to have the timing belt, water pump, valve stem seals, the valve cover gasket, and some various other things taken care of, just so I know that they were done. Fortunately, the 2JZ is a non-interference engine, which means even if the timing belt did snap on me, it wouldn't have done any damage to the engine. But still, that's not something you want to happen while you're driving down the freeway. So I took it to a shop, had them do all that, including the front main seal and the cam seals. Unfortunately, the shop didn't do it right either, at least with the valve stem seals and the valve cover gasket. So I made some decisions on some of the modifications I did to this car based on the reliance that he had done the work right. And so there's some things I would have done to this car differently had he had actually done his job correctly. With the engine squared away, I decided to turn my attention to the suspension. It was very obvious that the shocks were blown, and I was pretty sure the springs were tired. So I decided to switch out for the Tayan Street Advanced Z's. They have adjustable rebound and adjustable ride height, which makes it kind of nice. I did lower the car about an inch all the way around. Gives it that nice kind of low slung look, but at the same time I'm not so low that I'm scraping my front bumper every time I go in and out of a driveway. After that, I decided to turn my attention to the transmission and the differential. There again, I did not trust the previous owner had done any maintenance on it, so I figured I might as well take care of it and make sure it's got the right fluid in there. I drained the differential and I loaded it up with Redline heavy duty shockproof. And in the transmission, I managed to find the Toyota V160 transmission oil. It's really the only oil you want to use in that transmission, so I was very happy that it could still be found and got it. I also felt that the clutch was starting to slip, so I picked up a South Bend HD clutch to put in there, got rid of the slippage, and then I knew it'd be strong enough to hold the power that I was shooting for when it came time to finally starting to upgrade the power of the car. Now that I felt that the car was mechanically solid, I'd done all the preventative maintenance, it was finally time to turn my attention to the go fast bits. And I started where most people start off, with the exhaust. The previous owner had installed a Gretty SP catback exhaust. They're a discontinued exhaust, therefore they're kind of rare, so I decided to leave that. I thought it was cool. But I did decide to get the rod mill and downpipe. It's a mid pipe and a downpipe all in one, and it gets rid of all of your catalytic converters. And I believe it's a 3.5-inch pipe all the way back. And this is where the error of the mechanic I trusted kind of sent me down a path I wouldn't have gone down. I originally had only planned to keep the car on the stock twins and do what's called basic performance upgrades, or BPU. So once I put the rod mill and pipe on there, I started to get that little puff of blue smoke out of the tailpipe when I was leaving stoplights. And I refused to believe that the mechanic had done his job wrong, and there's no way the valve stem seals could be bad because they just replaced them. So I started to try and figure out what could be the cause of the issue. I went and had the engine compression and leak down tested again. It was fine, and my logic could only lead me to it being the twin turbos. I did pull the intercooler piping. There was no oil in the intercooler piping, so the only thing I could think of would be the oil seals, and it was leaking into the exhaust. So I started to think about it. I'm like, well, do I want to pull out the stock twins, which is a lot of work, and put another set of 25-year-old turbos in there that could have the same issue? It cost a lot to rebuild them. So I made the decision, let's go with a single turbo system. And there it is, the single turbo setup. There are a few advantages to having a single turbo over the twins, I'll give it that. One of the major ones being that the stock twins tend to eat up a lot of space in the engine bay, and when you go to a single turbo system, it definitely opens up the engine bay, gives you a lot more area to move around. Also, with going with a single turbo system, it has a more predictable power band because you don't have to worry about the gate opening up and spinning the second turbo, so it's a more progressive band, and it's just kind of better that way. Plus you run more power given the fact that it's got a bigger opening and can spool with more PSI. This particular kit I got has a BorgWarner SXE turbo. It has the full front mount intercooler all the way over to a teal blow-off valve that vents to the atmosphere, and a Turbo Smart 45mm wastegate that vents to the atmosphere. I am still running on the stock ECU and injectors, so I do have the boost limited to about 12 PSI. I am using the Innovate SEG1, which is this cool gauge that not only is a boost gauge and wideband O2, but it is also a boost controller as well. I also upgraded the fuel pump to the Walbro Hellcat fuel pump, which I believe is a 525 fuel pump. That way I had enough pressure in the line and I didn't have to worry about leaning out. I do watch my wideband O2 gauge quite regularly just to make sure I'm not running lean. Later on, I did have an issue with the stock radiator. This is very common. They tend to pop because they have plastic end tanks. Mine did that, so I decided to pick up a brand new coil radiator along with a radiator cap, and I haven't had any problems with the cooling system at all. Now that I'd made some major changes to the car, the next thing I turned my attention to was the seats. The stock seats in this car were just absolutely thrashed. As you can see, they were falling apart. The foam on them was completely dead. I was actually even starting to have lower back issues because driving to and from school is about an hour and a half each way. So I had a decision to make. I could either have the seats reupholstered, which would have cost quite a bit, or I could do what I like to do and pick up some Sparco seats. I'm just kind of a fan of having Sparco seats. It's just personal taste. In this particular case, the Supra is notorious for putting in aftermarket seats that sit high. It's just the way the seat base rails are designed. For some reason they sit high. Fortunately, I found out about Titan Motorsports, and they make a seat base that sits lower than any of the other ones, and along with the rails, my Sparco seats now sit just as low, if not lower, than the stock seats. I personally like them. These particular seats are the Sparco Milanos. They aren't made anymore, but it does have adjustable lumbar support if you want it. They're made of Alcantara, so here in the Southern California sun, it doesn't get overly hot. You don't sweat, you don't burn yourself on leather. I'm a fan of them. I have gotten some criticism from having them, but that's why, you build the car the way you want to build it for yourself. And that's pretty much the story of this car, from the time I bought it to what it is now. There are some things I did do to the car that I didn't want to talk about because I didn't want to bore you, like getting the AC working or replacing the rear hatch struts. However, if you have any questions or that is something that you would like to see, go ahead and post in the comments down below. I will respond to you. Don't forget, if you live in the area and you know of any good roads where I can take this car up next week and maybe get some good driving shots, go ahead and let me know there in the comments as well. If you like the video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you all out on the road.